Yo, 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 we are here. Instant reaction from a classic, two classics, really. First, TCU and Michigan, and an absolute great game. Then we went on to Ohio State and Georgia, thinking it couldn't live up to the hype. And not only did it, it was even better, even tighter, came down to a last minute kick. We're going to break it all down. But first, introduce my host, my brother from another mother, co host, producer of In Off the Bench podcast, Jim Cross. What up, Jim?
What it do?
And obviously, we know Miss Nikki Mays, queen of everything we do. What up, Nikki? How are you? Are you? Have you calmed down from the TCU game yet?
No, it hasn't sunk in yet.
How many Red Bulls and Sparks have you drank since?
With vodka or without?
We can tell by the little bit of a delay in the voice that there's been a little vodka involved. It's all good.
Yeah,
No,
she sounds sad.
I haven't drank in a few hours, actually.
Well,
and
that's
it's
good.
just now sinking in that we're going to LA.
Going to LA to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. And what up, Chris, the Vandy fan? Everybody knows him. Say what up.
Man, to think that I would have boycotted the playoffs if these exact four teams wouldn't have been in, all four absolutely delivered today, and I couldn't be more satisfied as a fan of watching both games.
Yeah, so I did boycott the playoffs actually because my team should have been there, but that's a story for another day. It's just honestly, it did live up to the hype, right? The right four teams were in it. There really wasn't a lot of debate. Jim and I talked about it in our podcast. We've talked about it on this one. There really wasn't a debate in my mind or his mind and our mind of who the four teams should be. Now, the question was, would they be competitive games? And what we found out today was absolutely yes. I think the lines were 6.5 and 7.5 respectively when they came out, moved a little bit throughout the week. But as we saw today, these teams were extremely evenly matched. I think that what we saw in the first game between TCU and Michigan was TCU jumped out, punched them in the mouth, kept punching them in the mouth. Michigan, as Nikki pointed out earlier on the show, great second half team. They proved that. And I wanted to bring Jim on to talk a little bit about that as well, because obviously we follow college football. We cover college football. But, Jim, when you looked at the game, me and you talked about on our podcast, we thought Michigan would have the advantage from a physicality standpoint. And that's no disrespect to TCU. Mm-hmm. We just both thought they would be able to run the ball a little bit better. So what did you think about TCU's ability to get out in space and really create mismatches against Michigan?
Well, to start with, on the physicality note, it started on the opening drive, right on that fourth and goal play where they shied away from their strength, right? And I still don't know what he was doing. And then once they got in that hole, they made the mistakes. TCU capitalized, got a lead. They went away from their identity and they were trying to do too much. And as they did that, they kept digging the hole deeper. More and more bad plays. Another interception. And it was like, you know this as well as I do. You've always got to go back to your identity. You can't panic. And they did that. And I felt like, people criticize Harbaugh a lot. Today's a good day to criticize him because I felt like the game plan completely went away and they made things harder for themselves than it really had to be. Because if you look at how they closed the gap in the second half, they could have actually done that in the first half, but they panicked.
I agree. And I mentioned that to Chris earlier, and we were talking. I said that when you get here, you can't go away from what you've done all season. Don't go away from what got you here. And I think that Michigan did. TCU, all the credit in the world for them for making them do that. But when you have the ball twice inside the 5-yard line and you get no points out of it, you go away from your identity. And I think that you hit it on the head. I think they did. But all the credit to TCU. Max Duggan was able to do his thing. We have a special guest, ladies and gentlemen. Chicago's own Mike Hughes.
I don't know if I call him special, but
the Rangers hat too.
Yeah, she's on this Rangers thing. But listen, we got Tennessee well represented. But Mike, what we were talking about, we're recapping the TCU Michigan game first. We're waiting on a really special guest to come on before we start talking about Georgia, Ohio State. But what did you think about TCU's ability to kind of get out in space, create some mismatches? Not only that, they were able to create some mistakes. Their defense, and I know we could talk about how many yards they gave up, and that's all fine and good, but points are what matters. TCU was able to score twice on defense. So what did you think about their ability to be opportunistic and take advantage of those opportunities?
Like I said the other day, did not care about this game, was not interested whatsoever. Sorry, Nikki, I'm sorry. Did not care, not a single soul. I saw that pick six in the first quarter, and I said, well, I guess I'm gonna grab a seat, and I did my thing. I watched the game. It was a hell of a game, but I do believe right now that this game was the game of playing for the national championship. No matter what happens, I don't think TCU has a shot against either OSU or Georgia.
Mike, what we say when they were still down 13, we messaged each other, me, you, and Jay, and said Michigan still got this in the bag, right? Like we never still doubted them.
100%. I was like, and you know what? I'll tell you what, if Michigan could just, I won't even say scout a kid, because I'm sure they scout all the right kids, but if they could just convince a kid who can actually play the quarterback position to go to Michigan, oh, they'd be insane. They'd be insane, because I'm not going to blame Jim for this loss. I think Jim did a really good job.
Me and Jim are.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
I think you're being a little hard, because while he made some errors on some interceptions, there's some beautiful. He got a beautiful long ball. I'll tell you that.
100%. But I think when you look at Harbaugh and what he's been able to do, I think one of the biggest things for him is making a lot with a little. Like I see, you got some big names in there. You got the Aiden Hutchinsons of the world. But, you look at the rest of that roster, and it's kind of just guys floating around, guys from the neighborhood. It's an interesting lineup. So I think he still did a lot with a little this season. Again, coming up short, but I don't know. I think they did their thing. But, Nikki, I'm not going to sit here and just talk about, Michigan. So I got to give my guy out there, QB1, TCU, his flowers. I mean, he played a hell of a game. It wasn't the greatest game, but it was definitely one of those games he's showing you again. He's a dual threat.
Duggan made big plays when they were needed. That's what you do.
A dual threat quarterback, man. I mean, and that's why I really wanted to see OSU versus TCU, because you got two dual threat quarterbacks. Now Nikki's got to sit here and watch Bennett play. We'll talk about that later. But I mean, Jim, they balled out.
Listen, before we go any further, we got the special guest. We actually have a real live Georgia Bulldog coming in. Mr. Fingers, talk to me, baby. Skip.
Listen, Skip. Let me tell you something, Skip. They had at halftime. They had written us off. Kirk Herbstreit was on the TV screen, smirking.
Oh, he's on cloud nine.
Looking all smug. He was talking about Georgia's down by 2 touchdowns. We don't know. Hey, look, let me tell you something, Skip. My granny used to tell me a long time ago, me and Sterling, it don't matter whether you win by a mile or you win by an inch, as long as you win. And then all of a sudden I looked up and I saw it in the movie, and Vin Diesel was saying it. All I know is that they wrote the Dogs off. The Dogs came back, outscored the Buckeyes 18-3 in the fourth quarter. Defense stepped up, did what they needed to do. Keely Ringo actually got up off the milk carton. My boy Fingers talked about that earlier. And now the Dogs are going back to the national championship. Oh yeah, Skip, they doing it. They're doing big things, Skip. Right now, I wish I had some hen dog to go with this Coca-Cola, but I'm gonna go ahead and represent the great state of Georgia by taking a victory sip of this Coca-Cola right here, right now.
Listen. Look, Uncle Shay, let me ask you a question. How tight did your buttocks get when they were kicking that?
Listen, pause. First of all, Skip, we're not discussing the tightness of my butt cheeks. My butt cheeks are already tight. I put in 8,748 squats on a daily basis, but we're not talking about that. This ain't Shawshank. This is the Peach Bowl. Pause. Peaches. We didn't talk about it. I didn't come on here to talk about my yams.
Randy, I want to bring up something that he brought up real quick. He was talking about Kirk Herbstreit. Does it bother you when he's calling Ohio State games? Because he makes it glaringly obvious the amount of knowledge that he has on them and the way he talks about them like they're his kids.
Oh yeah.
You know what? It doesn't really bother me. You can't help who you played for. It's just, you can't help who you played for. It's just that out of all of the broadcasters, it's just like Troy Aikman calling the Dallas Cowboys game. You know what I mean? But Troy does not make it glaringly obvious that he is biased towards the Cowboys. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if anything, he's even harder on the Cowboys, especially if he's calling the game and they're not playing well. Kirk Herbstreit was just, it was obvious. Like, when I think it was going into the fourth quarter, and he's like, well, the Dogs are down. We don't know what they're going to do. And he couldn't help himself.
Or when he started talking about the backup tight end that came in for Ohio State. I've watched this kid in high school. He's amazing.
I get it. You got that knowledge base because you play for Ohio State, and that plays a big part in when you do happen to call Ohio State games. But I think he's always going to have a complex, because anytime he gets beside himself on college game day, They love to pull up that clip of him standing on the sidelines watching during the Ohio State Michigan game, watching old boy go in the opposite direction, scoring a touchdown. They love to bring that clip up, and he hates it. He hates it with a passion.
Yeah, he does. But I want to bring up something, though. Hold up. Rick Collins says we need Stequavius. Now, earlier on the show, I picked Ohio State to win this game for one reason and one reason only. When I saw Stetson Bennett did not have the fade with the little lines in his hair, Stequavius wasn't coming out. I wasn't picking him.
You've standed firm with that all season. You said if he doesn't have the fade, you ain't with him.
I'm not.
But you know what? You know what, though? I mean, I think Stetson has gotten to the point where it's like, this is the point in Space Jam where Bugs Bunny stands up and said, you guys didn't need the special sauce. It was inside you all along. And then they went out. You know what I mean? I'm still working on that one. That one's not so good.
I was with it. I'm rocking with it.
Can I say a thought process though I have in regards to tying the two games about two teams, so Michigan and Ohio State. So they talk about that Michigan defense and everything, and then you looked at Ohio State's offense against that Georgia defense. Randy, would you not agree with, because we know the playmakers that Ohio State has, playing indoors like that versus the, where they have to play, usually you playing against 30, 40 mile an hour winds we've seen in some Ohio State games this year. I thought it benefited them, especially for their skill guys, to be able to play in that dome.
Oh, 100% agree. And I think that Ohio State or Georgia benefited from the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. got hurt. I mean, he was roasting them boys. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Yeah. Injuries happen. I'm not saying that's the only reason that Georgia won the game, because they made plays. But Marvin Harrison Jr. stays in that game, doesn't get hurt. It could be a completely different outcome. I mean, they were right there about to score on that very play.
On Stover, too.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys a question. Did you feel like it was a personal foul or a target or anything on that call?
It should have been called.
I think it should have been called. That was the clearest one all day, in my opinion.
I can't say targeting, but there should have been a personal foul. But they messed up when they called the penalty. They called, review for targeting. They didn't say personal foul first.
See, I'm a dirty player, so I didn't.
Our boy Drew, also a Georgia Bulldog, he said Herb Street gets a bit biased for sure. Rather annoying. Terrence Howard is worse for Michigan. I think you got some names switched up here. I don't think Terrence Howard's the dude you're thinking about. I think it's Desmond Howard.
Let's whoop that trick, baby.
Whoop that trick. Jim's wearing the hat.
Terrence, hey, man. Go on in there and be nice to that man so I can get that microphone, man. I need to get my motor on.
But doesn't Herb Street have a kid that plays for Ohio State? A couple of years ago, he had one that walked on there. I'm not sure if he's still there, but that could be another big reason behind that.
Does it bother you guys like that? I love it. Like, he hates Florida.
Well, you know what? If this was like if it was a Pat McAfee style,
yeah.
If he was like a Pat McAfee style broadcaster, then I would be 100% behind it. But
did you guys get a chance to actually watch that too? Because they were actually doing it live. They had their own station. Pat McAfee was on the entire.
I saw the back end of it after the previous game.
I had to turn it off. You know what it was that was throwing me off? Pat did a great job. It was nothing Pat was doing. But every time Pat spoke, which if you know Pat is quite often, they would take off the game and show Pat's fade. And I didn't need to see Pat's hairline the entire game. I just needed to see the game. If I want to hear him talk, that's fine. But why am I looking at you?
But yeah, hey,
that's what they paid him to do, boo boo. He was supposed to be on the sideline talking to people tuned in to see him. They called it the Pat McAfee show.
Let me see the game.
So Nikki asked, "Does it bother?" And I think, and he brought up earlier when he was talking about Troy Aikman, and same thing with Tony Romo, and then even when Drew Brees was calling games for the Saints, they were doing it unbiasedly. I personally would prefer somebody who's calling it and not showing that they, it's no different than why people don't like watching SEC games on CBS when Alabama's involved, because they make it clear as day. Gary Danielson.
Oh, Gary Danielson.
And that's why people hate Alabama on CBS, because they don't want to hear Gary Danielson talk about how much he loves Bama.
I agree with you.
So I actually mentioned this to Nikki and Randy earlier tonight. I like to listen to other schools' announcers from time to time. So tonight, I pulled up Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio on YouTube and listened to their crew. They got just as excited for Georgia making plays as they did for Ohio State plays. they weren't the typical homer announcers, and I actually really enjoyed them guys.
Yeah, and that's
No,
good stuff. That's what you want.
Yeah,
Randy,
that's definitely what you
I
want.
got a fun fact for today because I know Stat Guy couldn't be here. First time in history, down 14 points. The record is now 1-19. Georgia being the only team to come back in the fourth quarter, being down 14 points. I mean that it ain't no better way to do it against Ohio State.
Listen, I am probably I pride myself on being one of the most realistic University of Georgia fans you ever meet. I'm not gonna tell you nothing about dynasties and rings and things like that. I'm gonna say, look, we was really good last year. We were good this year. We were good this year, but we not quite. I mean, let's be real. I think this team was more complete. It wasn't as dominant, but I think it was more complete than last year's team because last year the defense was the star. The offense got to ride off the defense's coattails. Not to say that they weren't skilled, Brock Bowers, Lad McConkey, yada, yada, yada. But the defense was a star last year. This year, it was a good, even balance of offense and defense. I try to keep it real. And I'm not going to lie to y'all. Up until the point when they scored the touchdown, and even when they scored the touchdown, I said they gave them boys too much doggone time. There's too much time on the clock because C.J. Stroud had been doing what he was doing all night. And Colin and I said all leading up to this, Ohio State is not one to be played with. But the fact that, again, just like with LSU had 300 yards of total offense, and we still won by 20 points. Tonight, we were down by 3 scores against the most complete team we played all season outside of Tennessee. All respect due to Tennessee, my brother. I'm gonna give you Timmy props, Jeezy. Because I saw Jeezy, he was getting ready to hang his head. Like, what about the Volunteers?
Nah.
You know why LSU was able to put up those yards on you guys? Because
the backup quarterback,
the right quarterback that should have been starting the entire season finally played. That's an LSU fan telling you. Randy will tell you before day one, the day they named Jaden Daniels quarterback, I was pissed off. Dude's got talent, all the talent in the world, but Nussmeier's a gunslinger. And Randy, I know we're talking about these 2 games tonight, but you do know Kayshon Boutt's decision is because they have decided and made it clear that Jaden Daniels quarterback is the quarterback next year.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Is Kayshon leaving?
Yeah, he decided he's leaving because they don't throw him the ball enough.
They didn't have very good chemistry together. But I want to ask you guys a question. Colin just said, "Do you agree with Stetson Bennett for MVP?" And I saw that Drew answered no. Colin said same. Who you got? I actually think that Stetson Bennett has to be the MVP of the game just because when you look at the stat line, he's 23 of 34, 398 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. I think that when the game was on the line, Stetson Bennett made throw after throw that put them in a position to win. So, yeah, in my opinion, Stetson Bennett absolutely is the MVP.
Yeah, but look.
That right there proves kind of what we were talking about before. Other than opposite him on the field, he did not look good. He didn't look like he was putting up these numbers. Then you look at his stats. TCU, opposite. Michigan destroyed him in stats.
Yeah, no, they couldn't punch it in the red zone. That's all that matters.
Right. So
and after that interception, he really played his best football of the night. So, I have to agree with him.
So let me ask you: Is it
Georgia? Well, let me jump in on this before you go to the next one.
I was going to ask you this real quick. I got to ask you this as a Georgia fan. Seeing the way that Michigan, struggled to be able to get. Did you not salivate at the idea of Michigan would have been able to pull off that W against that Georgia with the way Georgia's defense is aligned?
You know what? To be completely honest, again, being a realistic fan, once you get into the playoffs, my thought process. Okay, as my thought process, put whoever you want to put in front of us. Our job is to make sure we win and you don't. Period. I don't care if it's Michigan, OSU, and I was worried about this OSU game. TCU, it doesn't matter who you put in front of us at this point. Early in the, during the regular season game, yeah, maybe I probably would have been. But at this point, it's like, you know what? There's no salivating. It's just we got to show up and do what we got to do. To go back before you move on, Randy, though, I was gonna. Oh God, I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind. Go ahead. It'll come back to me 2 questions later.
No. I was just going to say, Bill Sizemore comes on here and says, no fans can complain today. We got 2 absolutely outstanding games we did. And then he says, any UGA fan. So all you UGA fans that are listening right now, any UGA fan that still gives Bennett grief or don't believe, or don't believe in him is dumber than a box of rocks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. Third quarter, oh my God, man! All the fan groups are lighting up. Stetson Bennett sucks, and he need to put Carson back in. Ringo's a bum. Mind you, this is a guy who just 11 months ago was the hero of the national championship game. You know what I'm saying? That's how these fans do, though, man. You lose one game, and everybody wants to turn on you because they want to blame it. They want to blame it on. It's easier to put it on one person or the coach or the quarterback than it is to say we just didn't play our best ball that day. We weren't that team that day.
I want to ask you guys, Mike. I'm gonna start with you. Of the 4 games you saw today, and I'm specifically talking about the 4 quarterbacks. Which quarterback singularly impressed you the most of the 4 you saw today?
CJ Stroud, easy. I think, first of all power to CJ Stroud and Jalen Carter for being in this game in the first place. Both projected top 5 picks. I mean, you don't got to play in this game. I'm looking at Jackson Smith and Jigba on the sideline, perfectly healthy now from what everybody's saying, and he doesn't want to play in this game, and he's not even projected top 10. So I see that and that effect that had, obviously, after Harrison goes down, and you see that effect that has for CJ Stroud and his connection with everybody else on the field. CJ looked like an NFL-ready talent, and all power to Bennett, because you know how I came on this show last night and I said, listen, he reminds me of Mr. Irrelevant. You know, he doesn't do anything great, but he does a lot of things well. And I think that's really where he hits his strides, where if you watch the game film, kind of like Nikki said, you know, you look at this guy and you go, this kid's nothing. But then you look at the box score and you go, okay, but how the hell do you get 400 yards against Ohio State? Like, that's what it is. So I got to give Bennett his props. I did say watch him be the next Tom Brady and me bite these words that I'm wrong. And he's looking like he's about to go back-to-back as a national champion. So, I mean,
back, like Drake said.
I said Mike, Nikki. I didn't throw it.
You got a chance.
There's about 90%.
I wouldn't give him 90%.
Well,
the best quarterback today.
Mike still got the question wrong.
I still think it's CJ Stroud.
I think the best quarterback didn't play in either of these 2 games. Bryce Young's the man, dude. Period.
I agree with that. I just meant who you saw today. I definitely agree.
Bryce Young today.
Jim, can I ask you something, sir? Can I ask you something, Sir Jim Cross? Sir Jimothy Cross. Yeah. He said the 4 quararberbacks that played today.
I thought he said 4 games today.
To be fair, Bryce Young did play today.
Unless I'm hearing things, Randy, you said the 4 games today.
I said the 4. It's all good. You're right. He played today. I said today he did play today. So that's my fault.
Jim, can I ask you a follow-up question?
I meant the playoffs. That's my fault.
Did his game matter, Jim?
Ooh, yes, according to Alabama fans,
it did, because people say Alabama don't care when it's not the college football playoff. But let me tell you, since you went there, and Randy knows this, these games being what they were, the college football playoff games being what they were, needed to happen, because the Alabama fans, the faithful, were running off at their mouth today talking about how they should have been in. And now that these 4 teams played the way they did and put up what they did, now they have to shut up because there's no argument.
But they're not.
Chris, I want to come to you now. So this is Drew. He said Bennett needed to be better than 4th for the Heisman. In my opinion, the dude is never respected enough. Drew, first of all, I want to say congratulations to you opening up your brokerage. You and your wife doing great things. I don't mean any disrespect when I say this.
Much respect.
Yeah.
But now I want to disrespect you just a little bit.
As you should.
Stetson Bennett shouldn't have even been in the Heisman race. He certainly was 4th of the people that were there.
We know why, because your guy should have.
I'm biased.
No, you're not. Hey, you're not biased. I was in
Calm down, calm down, Kirk.
No. Let me be the non-Tennessee guy who was in Baton Rouge for the Tennessee game and watched Hooker absolutely piss on us. Hooker is that dude.
Jim, I'm glad you brought that up. Tell my boy Chris Keenhold here. You were there in Death Valley when they played. Did Tennessee fans outnumber LSU fans in the second half of that game in Tiger Stadium?
Absolutely, man. Look, and the thing about it was, they was cool as ice too, man. They didn't rub it in. They was fun to be around. We partied with them afterward. And hey, you know, I give Tennessee their due, man. They beat our ass, and they were still good people. But man, that game, it felt like it was 60-40 LSU off the jump, and then next thing you know, it was like 90-10, and it was all orange. And I think I was one of the last remaining purple. It was sad.
Real talk though. All respect due to the Volunteers for their bowl game, man. Look, I was in the house. Don't tell nobody. I was in the house singing Rocky Top.
That's what I'm talking about. It was a fantastic game. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Chris, I wanted to ask you, of the college playoff, the CFP Final Four, what player? Let's not even go quarterback. What player impressed you the most today?
I have to say C.J. Stroud, because I wasn't expecting to see what I saw from him. I just never was a believer in his abilities. He showed me a lot today. I was highly impressed.
Excellent. Nikki, are you going to say Max Duggan?
No.
Who impressed you the most? It doesn't even have to be a quarterback. Just who impressed you the most? And it can even be a coach.
First half of the game, Miller for TCU.
That is the amazing answer.
That's the perfect answer.
And it's funny because I sent Mike a message and I said, if they lose this game and I'm him, I get on the bus and tell everybody, F you.
Mm-hmm. He held it. He pulled the pieces together this week. Normally it's Max with the team on his back, and Miller stepped up. Our defense stepped up tonight too. Every one of those guys. I mean, 3 goal line stops, 3. Well,
Agreed.
2 and a fumble. So
agreed. And I think that it's easy to look at what, and you pointed it out in our chat, that TCU gave up a lot of yards. Michigan was trying to come from behind. So when you look at the yardage, you could look at that in the box score and say, okay, well, they gave up a lot of yards. They must not be very good, but they were so opportunistic and they created so many opportunities for themselves on defense. I thought the defense was fantastic for a large portion of the game. Obviously, in the second half, Michigan was able to figure some things out.
They were good when they were supposed to be good. So if it was in the red zone, if it was goal line, if it was third down, they produced at that point.
Nikki, I need you to be honest on that 1 yard line catch, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He was still bobbling. By the time he caught it, he was in the end zone. Don't lie to me. Be honest.
No, I think I called it.
Yeah, she did.
That. The only thing that gets me is don't blame that on the refs, because you were on the goal line. You should have.
I didn't blame it on the refs. I'm just saying I thought it was a touchdown.
No, she's talking about the fans.
Oh my God, it was bad. But no, you should have been able to punch that in on the goal line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Randy always says that one play doesn't dictate the outcome of a game.
I've never been one to blame the refs, because if we were playing good enough, we would have been ahead, and that wouldn't give me an issue.
Let me tell you something.
That way, if she was a Saints fan, I promise.
Let me tell you something about my boy Jim Cross. Me and Jim been friends since we were like 12 years old, right? And if there's anybody that has an adversary, right, like oil and water, it's Jim Cross and referees. We got a whole segment on our show. It was just called Blow That Whistle, where he would just call out.
I got a video from Gene's territory talking bad to me.
It was a birthday present. But real quick, before you go, Chris, I know Anthony's gonna have to go here in a minute. He's trying to ring in New Year with the missus. Yeah, absolutely. We're only gonna go a few more minutes, but I want to give Anthony a chance to talk about what you felt coming into the game and how you felt. Obviously, we know how you felt it went. You know, you win the game, but when you got down, they had the time. Ohio State drives the field. How did you feel about that field goal? Did you feel like he was gonna make it? That's a pretty good field goal kicker, man.
I don't know. Honestly, what I did watch it. Now, honestly, to tell you the truth, Georgia has had a history last season, this season, of, for some reason, the defense could play like god awful crap the entire game, but come up with a big play on special teams on field goal plays. Case in point, see the SEC championship game with Christopher Smith with the block and Christopher Smith running into the house. I don't know what it is. It's something about that defensive squad. Kirby being a defensive guy, I literally think that's a drill that they run on a regular basis. My thought was not that he was going to miss it. My thought was the defense was going to come up with a block.
I'll tell you what, as a Bears fan, and I've seen a lot of them, and I told Jim and Randy the same thing in the chat. That made me happy, because that was genuinely the worst kick I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of horrible kicks. So I was like, you know what? Maybe the double doink ain't that bad. That was a good 20 yards.
And
the best was I just got sent the Madden photo where you're angling the kick and it's got it angled way off to the side.
Yeah, it was bad, bro.
And
And this comment
That's
is this comment is very. I'm sorry, Nikki. Go ahead.
there were some bad ones today, but that one
Took the
you
cake.
definitely had the football god on your side.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. That comment is never more true. We definitely dodged a bullet because if we had played like we had been playing, bend but don't break, that game would not have even been as close as it has been. You understand what I'm saying?
If
you know what I mean?
one doesn't go out, what do you think?
You know what I mean? And then on top of that, it kind of gave me a little vindication because Pod Lesney, I know that second kick was a long one, but Pod Lesney, I won't say that we don't miss Rodrigo, but it's like we didn't miss a beat with getting Pod Lesney came in, and he missed 2 of them today, so it was a little vindication for us, I think.
Chris,
And
I want to go to
hang on a second. Let me check real quick. Let me check something real quick. Check the Fitbit. Yeah, my heart rate's finally down now. So,
Chris, I want to give you a chance to kind of go over that too. Both were. This is Jeff Griggs saying this. Both were great games. Anyone doesn't respect Ohio State, doesn't know football. Georgia dodged a bullet. So TCU won't be a walk in the park. I think we all agree with that. We saw TCU's earn their right to be there. None of us on this panel thought they didn't deserve to be there, I don't think. And if you did, forever hold your peace now. I know Jim didn't. But Chris, for you, do you expect the championship game to live up to what these 2 games were as far as entertainment value?
I have to believe that they will because you got 2 of the hottest quarterbacks as far as playmaking ability coming into this game, and I don't think there's any quit in either one of them.
He said Kirby said it best. Ohio State deserved that game. It was honorable respect. That kicker has the leg. It had to have been nerves. So, Mike, you know all about some double doinks. So, as an athlete yourself, just not too far removed from playing, and then now you got a Achilles. Are you like the new Anthony Davis? I just wanted to ask that.
Watch your tone, bro. You know what? You're so original, man. My whole wall is like that right now on Facebook.
But no, I wanted to ask you too. If you are an athlete and you're Ohio State, do you feel like this game you let one slip away? Do you feel like you're the better team for how you controlled a large portion of it, and then Georgia was able to come back and steal it at the end?
You live with that forever, and anybody who tells you they don't is lying. And that's just me, like, speaking like for facts. Like, I've won championships before and I've lost championships before, and I think that's the conversation that you really need to have with yourself as a man. What you're going to do to be better from that. I think that's where, especially from the kicking perspective. I don't know what class this kid is in, if he's a junior or a senior or whatever that case may be. But if he's a senior, that's a hard one to live with, especially knowing that, you haven't really been able to do it before for Ohio State coming that close. Not that TCU is a walk in the park, but definitely that this was the harder matchup of those 2. So it really is one of those kind of those ball breakers, man. And that's what – I'll tell you what, the Chicago slang for it, you know what it does? It builds character. So you could take it either way. It's either going to motivate you or it's going to build you into the person you already were. So it's really unfortunate. I don't really believe in the icing of the kicker. I think it's a huge waste of time. I think if he's going to smoke it, he's going to smoke it, and that's what it is. But, in an instance like this, nerves definitely played a role into it, I feel like.
Icing the kicker backfires. You see it.
Yeah,
they get a practice kick, and in the first game, it did help.
Yeah,
he nailed it, and then
I'm not a real big believer in the icing of the kicker. I think he's either going to make it or
I actually saw a game earlier this weekend, Ohio and Wyoming, where Wyoming calls a timeout on a kick that was missed. Ohio comes back out and makes the next one.
Yeah, it's a tricky game.
Hey folks, I hate to break the gang up, but I got to go. I did promise.
We're all about to sign off.
Before you leave, I just want to let you know that regardless if Georgia wins this year and they won last year, they still ain't better than 2019 LSU. Just need to get that out there. See, nothing. Y'all got nothing because we're still the best team to ever touch a college football field.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna ask you like your boy asked you a minute ago. Is that relevant this year?
Yeah, it's always relevant. Joey B is relevant.
All respect due to Joe Burrow. The boy was a beast in college. The boy is tearing it up in the league right now. But in 2022, Skip Bayless, do not get me started up in here because I already took my glasses off. So I'm just telling you, it's not relevant this year. In the college football realm, Georgia football, listen, I don't care how good Joe Burrow was. Joe Burrow did not run the table in 2 regular seasons and is now appearing in 2 national championships. That's all I got. Mic drop.
Mic drop. He's out. Nikki, you got some people talking to you in the chat. They said, Nikki, don't hate on us dogs too bad for the next 8 days. And before you respond, Drew, I don't know if you saw it. Nikki picked Georgia to win, but she actually threw up in her mouth live on TV while she did it. It was really hard. Chris had to coach her along to tell her to say it. So, Nikki, how hard are you going to be on the dogs in the next 8 days?
Depends on which ones.
All right, if it's Drew, you're cool.
Yeah, Drew's cool. Anthony's cool. The ones that I dealt with all season with TCU, that they don't belong there, they get lucky. Yeah, I'm gonna have some fun with that.
Oh no, I'm 100%. Anybody listen? If it's anybody watching this right now, okay. And I'm gonna say what I said during the halftime. The halftime recap. There's anybody watching this podcast, whether you're watching it live right now, whether you're watching the replay days down the road. If you right now are sitting there and you were one of those people that said TCU doesn't belong, TCU didn't even win their own conference, TCU's always playing from behind, like Kumo D said back in 1986, how you like me now? They beat the number 2 team. They beat the number 2 team in the country, and they didn't just beat them. They beat them like Debo beat Red.
Put up 50. Put up 50. But hey, Mr. Fingers, we know you got to go. I don't want the missus bringing love notes again live on the TV.
On that note too.
All right, boys and girls. Look, for the SEC Focus podcast and all of my guests that join me, congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs. Congratulations to the TCU Horned Frogs. For today, for now, we out.
Bye.